On April 19, 1775, British troops and American militiamen exchanged gunfire at the battles of Lexington and Concord, igniting the Revolutionary War. As the 13 colonies asserted their new power over Great Britain, they created new governments under their own constitutions. In Virginia, a committee was assigned to draft a new form of government. Included with the new constitution was a Declaration of Rights. The principal author of both of these documents was George Mason, one of the richest and most influential men in the state.
Once in Philadelphia, Paine began to write a pamphlet promoting the radical idea of American independence. Thomas Paine had suffered all his life under England's class system, and he spared no venom in his writing. In January of 1776, after virtually every typesetter in Philadelphia had refused to touch his treasonous work, a rebel printer finally agreed to publish it. Common Sense was its down-to-earth title. In its 47 pages, Paine attacked the notion that England's king should be seen as a parent to the American colonists. He set out to dethrone the sacred institution of monarchy.
When it came out, Common Sense sold 120,000 copies in the first 3 months, and over the course of several years it sold 500,000 copies. This was the equivalent, or almost the equivalent, of the Bible.
Common Sense was read aloud from street corners and pulpits, in taverns, parlors, and schools. The brilliant pamphlet was published anonymously. People speculated it had been written by Samuel Adams, John Adams, or even Benjamin Franklin.
Tom Paine was saying in this pamphlet what a lot of people were now thinking but had hardly dared to say out loud. In other words, that the colonies were at war with England.
It was a confusing economic period because so many different kinds of currency were already in circulation. In addition to British shillings and pounds, colonists were also using coins from Spain and France. Individual states also began issuing their own money of various denominations.
The first bank formed in the United States was formed by Congress in 1781. It didn't open until 1782. It was a part of the effort to straighten out the chaotic finances of the Revolution. That was the very first bank. It was in Philadelphia and called the Bank of North America.
One of its main supporters was Alexander Hamilton, who would become the first Secretary of the Treasury. But Hamilton had bitter disagreements with other founding fathers over both the necessity and the legality of a federal bank.
Of course, his great antagonist was Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson wanted to keep the government small. He wanted us to remain a nation of farmers. In Hamilton's view, banks were a key component of development. Jefferson's view was that, well, you know, the Constitution didn't mention banks. Maybe we didn't really need them.
Abigail would grow to be the equal of John Adams, his confidant and dearest friend.
She has really revealed herself as, yes, an 18th century woman, but her concerns sound very modern to us today.
John and Abigail Adams have become so prominent in the minds of Americans because of this collection of papers and the publications that have opened them up to the world.
The story of Abigail Adams in the Revolutionary War is a story of sacrifice, of commitment to country, and Abigail rose to the occasion.
Abigail was adamantly opposed to slavery.
She was quite a behind-the-scenes dynamo, I think. She warned her husband, you can't rule without including what women want and what women have to contribute.
The backdrop to the Adams' brief occupancy of the White House is one of political defeat and personal tragedy.
She is worried about her husband and defends him against slander. She's concerned about her children, their upbringing, their education.
She could hold her own with anybody in her own time and since. She was in every way her husband's equal.
As a politician, he still stands as one of America's most effective statesmen and ambassadors. In the summer of 1776, Franklin was part of the five-man committee that would draw up the document declaring American independence. Desperately in need of arms, the self-declared independent United States looked to France. When it came time to decide whom to send on this important mission, they chose Franklin. Franklin was able to convince the French to help the American cause and was very popular in French society. One woman invited him to spend a summer's night with her. Franklin asked to postpone until winter, when nights were longer. Women of all ages threw themselves at him.
Women liked Franklin for a very simple reason, you know, because he paid attention to them.
Back in America, Franklin represented Pennsylvania at the Constitutional Convention of 1787 and guided the near-deadlocked delegates towards a compromise on the new Declaration of Independence. George Washington said of Franklin, "If to be admired for talents, esteemed for patriotism, loved for philanthropy, can gratify the human mind, you, sir, have not lived in vain."
The election of 1800 set two precedents in American history. It was the first election in which the press played a big role. And for the first time in presidential politics, power was peacefully shifting from one political party to another. In this highly contentious election, the founding party of the nation, the Federalists, had been defeated. And the popular leader of a new political party was moving into the White House. Number 3, Thomas Jefferson, Democratic Republican, 1801 to 1809, 58 years old, from Virginia. Thomas Jefferson was the first president inaugurated in Washington.
Samuel Adams was a founding father, a member of the Continental Congress, signer of the Declaration of Independence, and governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. His contribution towards the founding of America and the Revolution is highly underrated and overlooked, as displayed in a quote by his cousin John Adams, which says, "Without the character of Samuel Adams, the true history of the American Revolution can never be written."
George Washington led the Continental Army to victory over Great Britain in the American Revolutionary War. He served as the first President of the United States, presided over the writing of the Constitution, and established a cabinet system.
James Madison was the fourth President of America and best remembered as the father of the Bill of Rights and for presiding over the War of 1812 with Britain. John Adams was the first Vice President and the second President of America. He is highly regarded as one of the most influential founding fathers of the United States.